Hello, and a very warm welcome back to my dear listeners. This is your host Sharmishta, back with episode 4 of The Strange Murders. After the advocate left, Kiriti sat mulling over what he had just heard. The mysterious lady friend of Norin Mollik needed further investigations. He picked up the receiver. Inspector Rahman, Kiriti here. I would like you to get in touch with Nondu again. Ask him for the address of that lady Norin Mollik used to visit. Send one of your officers there to question her. We will do it right away, Mr. Rai. The officer in charge of the Park Circus police station was Inspector Khudabakhsh Khan, a tall, strapping man and features that made him look more like a movie star than a keeper of the law. Khudabakhsh was of an extremely pleasant temperament, but those who knew him well knew that behind that pleasant face was a razor-sharp persona, highly intelligent. Inspector Khan was on his feet with eagerness when he got his orders to question that mysterious lady. Nondu had given the police the lady's address, and soon Khudabakhsh with two of his men were at her residence. But Inspector Khan had taken Nondu along too. Nondu, does the lady live alone? I think so, Shaib. I am not sure. Good. Then you come with us. Stay a little distance away from her main door. She should not see you. When she opens the door, just give us a signal that it's her. Understood? Nondu nodded. The inspector rang the doorbell and waited. A few minutes later, a young woman opened the door. Nondu, standing a little distance away, nodded. Good morning, madam. I am Inspector Khudabakhsh Khan from the Park Circus police station. We have come to ask you a few questions. The young woman looked startled. But questions regarding? It's about Mr. Norin Mollik's murder. Inspector Khan noticed the lady's jaws tightening. I cannot help you in any way, Inspector Khan. I know nothing. Now, if you will excuse me. She was about to shut the door when Inspector Khan put out his hand and blocked it. Madam, whoever said you knew anything about the murder? You knew Mr. Norin Mollik well. We would like to know something about him. And just so you know, I have orders from my superior to question you. So kindly cooperate. The lady reluctantly moved aside and let the policeman enter. She motioned them to be seated. I'll just be back, Inspector. Khudabakhsh looked around the room. The sofas, wooden chairs around definitely had seen better days. The walls had not been painted or even whitewashed for over years now, it seemed. The carpet was worn. The lady came back and seated herself opposite Khudabakhsh. What is it you would like to know, Inspector? She was very beautiful, no doubt. Waist-length, raven-black hair, a beautiful, unblemished face, well-defined nose, and a pair of bright, sparkling doe eyes. Khudabakhsh cleared his throat. Madam, I will begin by asking your name. Krishna Chaudhary. You knew Norin Mollik well. I don't understand your definition of knowing well, Inspector. Yes, I had met him a couple of times at social do's. That's all. But that's not what we heard, Miss Chaudhary. In our line, we do not speak without a complete background check. Not only did you know him well, you two were quite close too. You were a regular visitor to his house. Inspector Khan, now that's a serious accusation. And I'm sorry to inform you that your so-called background check is completely wrong. I have never been to Norin Mollik's place. As for being close to him, you have been seriously misinformed. And I think you have wasted my time enough. Now, if you will excuse me. At that moment, a male voice floated into the room. Someone was reciting poetry. I wander lonely as a cloud that floats on high o'er vales and hills, when all at once I saw a crowd, a host of golden daffodils, beside the lake beneath the trees, fluttering and dancing in the breeze. My father, Shonjib Chaudhary, he loves literature and poetry, Inspector. That's him. I see, and he can't move around on his own. My father is a paralytic, waist downwards. The inspector was about to ask her further when he heard a female voice. Didi? Didi? Where are you? A young lady stood on the doorway. One look at her and Inspector Khan was left dazed. It seemed to him he was looking at a mirror image of the lady who was seated in front of him. The same features, same raven black waist-length hair, even the eyes. My sister, Inspector Khan, came Krishna's voice. Your sister, your twin sister. Yes, just 2 hours apart from each other. The other young lady had in the meanwhile entered the room and sat down beside her sister. She is Kaberi. Inspector Khan had in the meanwhile managed to gather his wits about him, but was still wondering about the uncanny resemblance. So, Miss Kaberi Chaudhary, yes? I'm sure you must have heard about the death of Norin Mullik. Did you know him? Krishna answered. No, she did not. Inspector Khan turned to her. Miss Chaudhary, I would prefer your sister answered that question. She's not a kid. You don't have to answer for her. Yes, Miss Kaberi Chaudhary. Did you know Norin Mullik? Kaberi glanced at her sister before replying. No, Inspector, I did not. You mean you didn't visit him at his place either? Kaberi looked at her sister again. No, I never did. I had just met him at a few social do's, that's all. She glanced at her sister again. Inspector Khan narrowed his eyes. Both the replies had been exactly the same. Either of the sisters were lying, or both were. He tried again. Well, his servants and driver have seen you at his residence many times. It wasn't me, Inspector. Norin Mullik had celebrated his birthday. Your names were not on the guest list. Yes, this time Krishna replied. We were not invited. That's why I said we did not know him that well. We were not that familiar with him to be invited to his birthday. I hope you are done with your questions, Inspector. One last thing, madam. I want a detailed report of where both of you were, what you were doing on Monday night, the day he was murdered. It was a usual day for me. Both of us work at the telephone exchange. I had gone to work that morning and returned home by 5 p.m. Kaberi had been feeling a bit under the weather that day and was home. Yes, Inspector, Didi is right. I had spent the day reading and resting. In the evening, I went for a walk by the Ganga and returned home around 10 p.m. You were alone or... I was alone, although I did bump into a friend of mine, Advocate Bipin Mukherjee. And where does your advocate friend stay? 3/1 Regent Park, Tollygunge. That's his address. Thank you for your cooperation. We shall be getting in touch with you again if required. As Inspector Khan sat in his jeep, he wondered. We are up against two very clever women. Where is this going? A twin dilemma? Kiriti will be having a lot on his hands with this new twist in the tale. Krishna and Kaberi. Who is lying? Who is the culprit? Let's find out as I return soon with the next episode. Till then.